Babylon's Fall is a game that I've been following for a while now, and very recently a demo for the game was released to give players a taste of what to expect. It started life as a single-player action RPG, and from what I understand, it was turned into a live service game late in development, complete with premium currency, a battle pass, and on top of that, they're asking full price for it. For those of you who may not know, Babylon's Fall is being developed by Platinum Games, and it's published by Square Enix, so when I heard about it, I was genuinely quite excited to try it out. This is a game that I wasn't going to get a review code for because, Square Enix don't deal with channels of this size, which is of course fine, but I was actually going to buy it myself and review it. However, after putting a good number of hours into this demo, I can categorically state that I personally do not like how this game is shaping up, and so I'm going to try to explain why that is. So first of all, what kind of game is Babylon's Fall? Well, it's a third-person action RPG with hack-and-slash combat, lots of loot to collect, a painted art style, and some live service elements. The game has two main focus points, and those are the home base and the missions. Of course, there is going to be some inventory management and a gear screen to consider, but you can't actually do any of that during a mission. The demo gives you a somewhat limited character creator and asks you to pick a faction. Now, I'm not sure if this is the correct pronunciation, but you can choose from the Huissian, who are refined seafarers from the east, the Agavian, who are noble soldiers from the mountains, or the Galalion, who are noted as skilled hunters from the West Isles. The faction that you choose at the start of the game affects which abilities will be available to you, and your choice cannot be changed later on. After you've sorted all the character stuff, you'll get some story and some cutscenes that give you context as to what's going on, although as you'd expect, it is quite vague. You'll then be dropped into the hub area of the game where you do all of your character management. Some services and vendors are gated off until you've spoken to certain characters and cleared a few of the missions, but there's a couple of things you'll have access to. There's a general store run by Pygmalion and Galatea where you can buy and sell most items such as gear, emblems, and banners. The in-game money that you earn are called conches, and as far as I can tell, this is the common free currency that doesn't cost any real cash. If you look at the tabs at the top right corner, you'll notice that the free currency shop is the third one along because, of course it is. And the first page that opens up when you enter the shop is, of course, the premium currency page because, again, of course it is. It looks like you'll be able to buy a currency called Garaz or something like that, which will have its own section in the shop. Now obviously I wish this wasn't a thing at all, but I have no idea how bad this will turn out or what the prices will be. Looking back, however, the history of live service pricing does not fill me with confidence. You'll also be meeting the blacksmith, the mission giver, and the lady in charge known as Sophia as you explore the hub. When you're ready to go out on a mission, you simply need to head to the mission board and pick one up. You can play solo, with friends, or with randoms, although I could never get the matchmaking to work, not even once, and that is not a good sign. The game is not open world, and from what I've played, it seems very limited in scope. You have the hub area, and then you warp to the missions, which are all rather linear, and then you warp back to the hub when you're finished, and that seems about it. The mission structure is also pretty lackluster and underwhelming, at least as far as I'm concerned. You warp into the mission, and then you move through the linear level until you reach a large room. Once in this room, the exits will all be sealed, and you'll need to defeat all the enemies that spawn in order to move on. Then you move along through the linear level again, and you get to another room, rinse and repeat. You'll also be scored and get better rewards based on how well you do in each encounter. There are some items to collect and chests to open along the way, but apart from that, it's always point A to point B to point C and then back to the hub. Combat-wise, you have access to 4 weapons at any one time, and you can dodge and jump if need be. Weapons act differently depending on where you slot them in your inventory. So as an example, I'm playing this on PS5, so the square button is always a weak attack and triangle is always a heavy attack. So if I put my sword into the square slot and the hammer into the triangle slot, the sword will produce quick, weak attacks by pressing square, and pressing triangle will result in slower, harder hitting attacks with the hammer. You could then decide to switch them up if you want to and have the hammer slotted to square for quicker attacks and the sword as the heavy attacks equipped to triangle. You'll also be able to equip 2 more pieces of gear to L2 and R2, and these can be activated at any time, even during your own attacks and when you've been knocked down. You essentially have 2 weapons that you wield and 2 weapons that attach to some sort of ghost arms that you can use at any time. And again, you can put anything you want onto any one of these 4 buttons. You could even put a shield onto the R2 button and have it up, defending you while you're attacking as an example. As you might expect, all of the gear has its own stats and bonuses, as well as a power level, which is essentially an overall gear score like you would find in Destiny or The Division. When you discover and acquire gear from chests or dropped from enemies, you won't be able to do anything with them until the end of the mission. You can't find a new pair of boots and then equip them during the mission as an example. As always, gear has a rarity color and in this game starts life as a relic. At the end of a mission, those relics are appraised, which reveals what they actually are. Then when you arrive back at the hub, you're free to equip your new stuff or sell what you don't want. And so as you can probably see, the game seems to be very repetitive and, that's not always a negative. If I find the gameplay fun enough, I can play the game over and over with no issue. I mean, I did it for years with Destiny 2 until they started getting too greedy for my liking, and of course I love the Warriors and Muso style games. I think this game could have been fun, but the combat is, and this is just my personal feeling, awful. It's not the worst I've ever played, but to me it does not feel good to play. As I said earlier, this game's being developed by Platinum Games, who have a great track record with action RPGs. They've given us some great games including Bayonetta, Nier Automata, Astral Chain, and Transformers Devastation, to name but a few. The first Bayonetta game had a combat feature that followed through into all of those games, and that was called Witch Time, a state that's triggered when performing a perfect dodge that slows down time for all of your enemies but not for you, allowing for some very satisfying counterattacks. That feature is present in Babylon's Fall, but in my opinion it feels very poorly done and implemented, like it's an imitation or a copy by a studio with much less experience. And I don't say these kind of things lightly, but the entire combat system in Babylon's Fall feels like a huge miss from such a legendary studio. It really is quite strange. I mean, during a fight, the character's movement feels really sluggish and imprecise. Trying to target the correct enemy feels very clunky, and your character will often swing at completely the wrong monster, despite you holding the stick in the correct direction. Even the Witch Time perfect dodge mechanic doesn't work very well. In games like Transformers Devastation, slowing down time with a perfect dodge allowed you to get a few hits on the enemy, and then they would stagger, allowing you to further your combo and provide a satisfying end to the counterattack. In this game though, you slow down time, and before you can even connect your first attack, it just kind of fizzles out and they slap you in the face anyway. Now of course, some people might just say, well, get better at the game, and sure, that is a valid point, but it's something you really have to feel for yourself in the gameplay. It feels like the enemies barely have to look in your direction for you to flinch and stop your attacks, whereas they rarely stagger and soak up hit after hit like it's nothing. They have an incredible amount of HP and it feels just, irritating, annoying, and intentionally frustrating to play. And on top of that, the enemies you fight are really quite bland and generic looking, except perhaps for one of the bosses. He was pretty cool, but the fight he was in was not. You fight this huge humanoid boss named Xenon, and it was like pulling teeth. I mean, honestly, I don't know, maybe it was just me or something, but locking onto him and trying to attack him in certain ways just made the camera screw up constantly. Plus, the chains that are all over the ceiling don't have that translucent effect, so they were always blocking my vision. The whole fight just felt really off, and I did manage to kill him first time, which is the footage that you're seeing here, but it really, to me, was not fun at all. And lastly, I have to talk about the visuals. Now, I get that it's a choice, and it's something that the developers chose to do here, but in my opinion, as I see it, I think it looks absolutely abysmal. It just flat out doesn't work for me. There were a few moments where I was like, oh, that looks, kind of nice, but 90% of the time, it just looks bad to me. I don't know what to say. They've gone for a painted look, with some things looking like watercolor paint and other things looking like acrylic paint smears, but instead of just applying these as a texture to the in-game assets, they've used what seems to be a filter over the entire screen. It kind of ebbs and flows constantly and moves around like it's not a static image. It doesn't stay still and it just kind of moves everywhere. It's really off-putting and really kind of ugly in my opinion. There was one cool use of it though. I don't think I got footage of this. I'm not sure. If I did, you'll be seeing it here, but in some games where buildings and details switch to a lower res version of the same thing the further you get away from them? Well, in this game, it does kind of do that, but it changes the low res details into a sort of smeared paint effect. This means the further away you get, the more it looks like a painting, and I thought that was kind of clever, and I thought it looked quite good in most instances. But then you add that weird filter back over it, and it just ends up looking horrible. Also, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm not keen on having the gear floating around behind you like that. I get that it's thematical and it does make sense in terms of the narrative and the story, but you can already see what you have equipped in the bottom left corner of the screen, so why do you need to see it floating behind you like that? And so I think At the end of the day, you've got combat that feels like a chore to play, visuals that in my opinion make the game worse, linear, lackluster missions, and then live service crap on top. And I just don't know what to say, really. I don't like to tear into games. I want games to be good and I want them to succeed. But I've barely heard or seen any hype surrounding this game at all. And if I had to guess, I bet that it's going to be absolutely dead on arrival. So all in all, if you have some kind of interest in seeing how this game plays for yourself, there is a demo available right now for free. If you're someone who actually does want to buy this game and you're interested in picking it up, please do try the demo first. You might save yourself a big chunk of money if you do. Originally, I was going to buy this game with my own money and then review it, but after playing this demo, that is no longer the case. It just doesn't feel fun to play, and I could have perhaps put up with the art style and the live service crap if the moment-to-moment gameplay was enjoyable and engaging. Sadly, I just don't think it is, and I'm frankly shocked that Platinum Games would want their name attached to this project in any way at all. Ultimately, my initial impressions are not good, and my recommendation would be to stay away from this game. I think it's one of those games that feels doomed to fail from the start and would need to be completely scrapped and rebuilt to fix the issues, much like Anthem or Marvel's Avengers. I would be very, very surprised if this game gets any traction in the market, especially when Elden Ring has just released. It's definitely a shame, as I really wanted to like it, but hey, if me playing this demo and making this video saves you some money, then I've done my job. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing, and if you like what I do and want to help support the channel, please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.